Good morning. Good morning and welcome to our 9 a.m. strategic planning meeting. It is August 15th, 2022. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present, our executive management team, and we're going to start off the morning with Steve Bartell from Risk Management.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Usually I give my risk management annual report in the June timeframe, but as we all know, the auditor's office has had a heck of a time trying to get their numbers right. So one of the biggest numbers I used is the total expenses for the county and my cost of risk calculation. So therefore it's been delayed a couple months, but I kind of like to give it in June just because it gives more of an idea and a perspective when we're right in the middle of that initial budgeting grows for what the liability cost allocations and what the workers' comp rates are going to look like. Those are always a couple of things that kind of are almost burst into the budget process. But so I gave each of you a copy of the annual report, but I also created a PowerPoint just to go over the highlights of the report. So just to get started, I'd like to kind of just executive summary some of the things that we accomplished. And remember, this report has to do with all the data that ended December 31st, 2021. Right, so it's looking back. So in 2021, we updated the desktop incident guide to change it from a campus only to a county-wide document, which is that red and white calendar looking thing that a lot of you have in your offices that give the initial direction on any kind of incident or emergency that happens in the county. Primarily, it was designed because we were having some issues with some power outages. And when we have power outages, of course, it's pretty hard to get to our electronic documents to pull up the procedures and so on and so forth. So it was an aid and to help with that, but we updated that in 2021. Again, you know, in 2021, we were still at the end of the throes of the COVID pandemic. So working with, you know, HR and other departments, continued to provide guidance and updates on what L&I was doing and what the state was doing, and making sure that we met compliance standards for the COVID issues. And as you all know, just as we thought we would put some new direction out, 2 days later, it would change. So that was a continual process throughout the entire year for the last couple of years. We implemented the wildfire smoke exposure prevention program that L&I came up with, which is a great thing, in my opinion, with all the wildfire smoke and the contamination and the exposure from that. We now have the AQI, which is the air quality index, posted on our county ideas, and we send out notifications when it reaches one of two different levels, which on that code red system, so that departments can go into action with issuing the N95s, or even to the point where they have to limit outdoor work and even pull them off the outdoor jobs. We finished our risk management department COOP plan, which actually was in process for a lot of years and work in progress. But quite honestly, with the ability to telework and the additions of the electronic equipment that IT was able to get, where everybody could go to the plug and play and laptops and be able to work remote, we were able to easily finish that COOP plan, and it's actually been in process for a couple of years now, because as you know, my staff is a complete hybrid of all staff work from home a couple of days, they work in the office a couple of days, and all our in-office coverage needs are met. And then of course we replaced the old campus incident notification system, the archaic system, with the code red system. In 2022, some of the goals and objectives is, of course, to support the COVID response through our workers' comp claims. And I'll talk a little bit about that more later on how that affected our workers' comp fund. And the latest update of actually getting ARP money. And I appreciate the approval on that, so we could restore some of the money spent on that COVID expense through our workers' comp fund. That will do a lot in getting our numbers out of the red and back in the black. We're in the process of updating all the work area emergency plans. As you remember, we're going from a strict evacuation plan to incorporating not only evacuation, but shelter in place and lockdown for active shooter. We probably issued about 20 or so plans so far, and we're continually working with the departments. It requires them identifying an emergency coordinator, us doing a safety and security assessment of their work area, completing some statistical data on what types of security and safety programs and equipment they have in place, and also identifying future needs for the bigger picture on a security improvement plan. And then we created templates for those, so it's pretty easy, fill in the blank and then issue the emergency plan, in which the department can then train and start doing drills. We partnered with HR and IT to improve the new employee orientation, getting it down to 1 day. We used to spend almost an entire day just ourselves, but we changed the philosophy there, where we give them the direction and point out where all the information is, and briefly cover what's important on day one when they come to work, but then put a lot more emphasis on their onboarding process with the department, which in our opinion provides a lot longer lasting security and safety program, is so that some of the stuff will stick, right? I mean, you try to feed a brand new employee in the first day with all of the safety and security compliance items, their head's already spinning. Trying to retain any of that is next to impossible. We're also working with HR and getting all of our online training classes into Precipio, so they can be assigned during that onboarding period. And those that weren't lucky enough to be in this new program of the onboarding, the employees with a bit more seniority can go back at any time, be able to access that stuff for a refresher, which is a big plus as well. And then I'm working with Ashley and HR, and we're drafting a bigger picture security improvement plan. Hopefully there will be some ARP funds there, but we've recognized several systems that would be beneficial to whether it's on campus or out in the satellite locations, things like intercom systems and better lighting and building lockdown systems and equipment to aid in their lockdown areas within their facilities. So that's kind of where we're at. We're awfully busy, but that's a good thing. On page 9 of the report, you'll see that I just wanted to give you a 30,000 foot level of total claims, and that's liability, property, and our injury claims. Both liability and property decreased in the number of claims that were submitted quite drastically, honestly. And the injury claims increased in the injuries for workers' comp, but quite honestly, those are due to the COVID claims in 2021. So if we wouldn't have had this COVID pandemic, I think we would have had a threefer, where all three claim sections would have seen fewer claims. And we also saw a decrease in the severity or the total cost in those claims in both property and workers' comp. But unfortunately, we had that 1 in 20-year event where we paid about 1.6 million in liability claims out of our fund. That's just our deductible portion of it. A whole lot more got paid from the risk pool and the insurance companies. Again, I'll remind you that the 8 deaths in the jail, those were kind of the spearhead from 2021 and 2022, because standing here today, we only have 2 of those left. And both of them are in settlement negotiations right now. Jeff Feiner is the plaintiff's attorney. And even though he's somewhat of a pain in a normal plaintiff's attorney that files claims against the county, I have to say he is reasonable and fair and isn't looking for a, Hill type verdict of multi-millions of dollars. So hopefully we'll get those resolved. We do have another claim. We had a mock trial last week in the Grosser case, and so I will probably be coming back to you for another executive session to explain and talk about how that came out. Cost to risk, that's really the measurement of our program. And what cost to risk is it's the measurement of total county expenses to what the total risk management costs are. We include security as well as liability, property, and workers' comp in that calculation. The industry standard is 3%. And since 2006, we have been below that standard, which tells us we have a very effective program. In 2021, our cost of risk calculated to 1.71. So you can see it's about half of what the industry practices. And a 4-year average, because we do have a little bit of volatility from year to year, actually came to 1.98. So still far below that industry standard. So our program is effective. There's always room for improvement, and we keep fighting the fight. To break down the workers' compensation program, our annual hours stayed about the same. I think there was a decrease by less than 1%. So we still have about 3.66 million worker hours per year, which is a pretty good sized organization. Our time loss compensation increased by 8%. And that 8% increase is all due to those COVID claims, because what the COVID claims did was they paid back our workers for lost time because of quarantine and isolation. Very few of those COVID claims ended up in a medical cost, or they were hospitalized or needed more care. Probably 95% of the cost was just paying time loss to those individuals, which again was the right thing to do. Our partial permanent impairment, which is the difference between when somebody gets to maximum medical improvement and they're still not made prior injury whole. In other words, if somebody has a shoulder surgery or a knee surgery or back surgery, there's always going to be a gap because we're never going to be able to return those to before injury status. And that decreased by 20%. So we had more severe injuries that required surgery. And that permanent impairment rating is legislatively set. So if somebody has a knee surgery, they go through the process, they're ready to return to work, they go in for an independent medical examination and they're rated by the physician. How much impairment goes to a chart in the workers' comp system, they get a paycheck.
So what I heard, and correct me because I'm not sure I heard it right. So what you're saying is that when somebody undergoes surgery to correct a medical condition, that they never return to the full functionality they did before the surgery. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
So then why do the surgery? I guess I'm troubling to understand how that happens.
Sure.
And if we're investing a lot of money to get them whole again and they're not getting whole again, then what are we, is there something we can be doing better, I guess? Or maybe I just don't understand, which is.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't explain it very well.
Okay, thank you.
So when somebody is injured and it requires a surgery, shoulder surgery, a knee surgery, a back surgery.
And we're talking about someone injured on the job.
On the job, yes. And they go in and they get authorized for the surgery, even though they recover to a point where they can fully return to work without restrictions. The physicians still give them a impairment rating, and it could be 2% or 3% or 6%. It's a very low impairment rating, but they're never gonna be 100%. And part of the reason they take that into account is over the years, as they get older, sometimes those surgeries, right, an injured knee to the point of a surgery or a back, are gonna give them problems down the road. Okay, so even though they're returned to work with a full release, the way the system is set up and they get to maximum medical improvement, they're gonna get an impairment rating in about 90 to 95% of the cases. A big one is hearing, right? When you have hearing loss and you go and you file a claim and you get hearing amplification devices or hearing aids, there's still an impairment rating, because even though you can hear now with those devices and you're able to work, right, without any restrictions, you still have the hearing aids. So there is an impairment that they rate, and all those are set by legislature. So every year they go and they readjust those, and you know, like anything else, they go up, they go up, they go up. So our impairment ratings are just, it's part of the claim closure process. They're set by L&I. There's an order that we pay X amount of dollars, and then they're done.
So did you guys understand that way?
I didn't know that's how that worked. I didn't.
Yeah, that's new to me. So is there a metric that says that once you reach a certain level of impairment, you're no longer employable at that job, or how do we adjust for that graduated impairment then?
Great question, Commissioner. So in the process of recovery, if the doctors, even after surgery and even after all of the medical care they can provide as curative treatment, if they don't get to a point where they can return to the job of injury, then they will go through, and it's not, they don't automatically get a disability, but they are approved for vocational retraining. And it all depends also how many transferable skills they have, right? You know, there are folks that have a 4-year degree that are, you know, working in the roads department or something like that. And if they're injured to the point they can't physically return to that type of work, manual labor type of work, then they will do a complete independent medical examination and determine all of their transferable skills. They will go to a vocational counselor, and they will determine if that person is eligible for vocational training or reassignment, but it doesn't guarantee their position with Spokane County.
And Steve, if I could add, just maybe for clarification, Commissioner French, the physicians, when they're working with our employees to determine return to work, they have the full job description, they have the minimum qualifications, they have the physical requirements of that job. So when the physician is determining whether or not a person may return, and they do that maximum medical capacity, they will say at that point, okay, yes, they'll be able to meet the qualifications or not. And when there's the not, that's when it launches the process that Steve is talking about. So our exact requirements are used to determine that process for that position.
Thank you. I learned something new every day. Still.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a strict liability program, right? I mean, that it unbelievably, a person can be violating policy and operating outside the box, and if they get injured on the job, they're going to be provided coverage, period. The only way that coverage is denied is if they willfully try to injure themselves, and it's the trade-off for paying a lesser amount with the rate schedules for doctor bills and so on and so forth, versus a third-party liability claim where they get injured on the job, they file a claim against the county and try to get uncapped funds from us.
So Steve, with what's happened in 2021, so with COVID and people were working from home more and all of that, you said there was a reduction of injuries in 2021 that we had.
Right.
We had more time loss hours because people had to quarantine and isolate, than we had more of that, especially I think in law enforcement and detention services, which are the big ones that, you know, were essential workers that had to be there. How do we think that, I mean, if someone's home and they're working from home, and if they injure themselves, is that on the county or is that on them? That was a question I had.
It's a great question, and the answer to that is yes. If they're on the clock and they're reporting hours, then they're covered through workers' compensation. We had a gal in the auditor's office who tripped over her dog in her office. We sent it to L&I with a request for denial. And we actually went a couple of rounds in the Industrial Court of Appeals, and we lost. So
Interesting.
it doesn't matter if they're working remote or not. She got up from her desk, her dog was at her feet, she tripped over her dog and broke her.
Okay. Curious on that question, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
This will be my last one.
No,
So
If it's about the dog, just don't now.
just don't, yeah, just. That was good. I could have gone there, but I didn't. So, as we struggle to get younger employees coming to the county, and we strive to have some of our senior workforce work longer, I'm assuming based upon what you've said, that our cost associated with that is probably increasing, maybe incrementally more with the older employees than it would be with younger employees. That assumption, I don't know that that's true or not. But if it is true, what is that cost that we're incurring by trying to retain people longer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, aging workforce.
Yeah.
It's hard to put up, you know, I'll show you in a chart here. Well, I think it's up there. And it's in your book. But what we did is we broke down in different work areas, which is our primary sources, I guess you could say, with where we see the highest exposure to our injury claims. So obviously law enforcement and detention service and public works are the three leading departments. Then you'll see the other column is all others. So all of the other claims put together are generally less than any one of those three. And as far as working remote, we're actually seeing lower number of claims and lower cost, just because we had the one claim, broken leg. Because more people are working from home, we are seeing less injuries. We used to see a multitude of injuries from, you know, just somebody hurting their back from lifting a box in an office, or getting out of their chair and twisting their knee, or tripping down a stair or something like that. We're not quite seeing the number, but it'll take a few years also before we kind of can get the data that will show one way or the other as far as solid evidence. But I believe what we're seeing so far, we're seeing reduced costs in workers' comp from a lot of our workforce, because obviously it's not law enforcement, detention services, and public works that are, you know, being able to telework, right? I mean, they're out in the field, they're doing their job, and that's where those exposures are.
But we are seeing those that are working at home are having fewer claims than have they been in the office on site here on campus.
Yes. So far over the last 2 years, we've seen a reduction in claims from basically that worker classification of clerical, which are a lot of those that are able to work from home.
despite the presence of dogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
One bad dog.
One bad dog.
And one of the things that we do is we launched a program quite a few years ago, and we monitor it every month, where we look at trying to get those workers in law enforcement, corrections, and public works back to work as soon as possible through a temporary assignment where they come back in a light duty position, and it actually progresses through their treatment to where they're back to work fully. And for instance, in 2021, we saved about $112,000 of what we would have paid in time loss just through that program of trying to get workers back to work. Sheriff's Department is really good about bringing people back to work and, you know, throwing them in with the detectives or the training department or something like that where they're not as physically demanding of a position. Corrections is very difficult, obviously, because they're, you know, up in the and have to be able to defend themselves and so on and so forth when they're monitoring their cells. The admin side is a lot easier, obviously, and they're, you know, detention services do some light duty things, but they're more limited because they don't have the training department or detectives or admin type of stuff that they can reassign them to.
There's only so many people at the front area that can
Correct.
take
And
people in.
Public Works is kind of the same way. You know, they can only take so many folks and bring them in the office to do, you know, kind of filing or helping with paperwork or stuff like that. I mean, you gotta be out working on the roads and, you know, doing those type of things. The COVID claims. So there were 40 claims filed in 2021, and that was a cost of $214,427. Okay, so that shows the number of claims and that increase in workers' comp and also the cost. Even though we had a decreased overall, it would have been far better. But again, that American Rescue Plan money not only pays back all of that money, but also what is expected to for us to spend in 2022. So that's a good thing.
Oh, Scott has one, then I got one.
Oh, just a
I
quick
thought you
one.
said you're done, but we
Well,
knew you were.
I lied.
We knew you were. It's all good.
Steve, can you remind us again the difference between first party claims and third party?
Sure. Third-party claim is those that the public file against us. You know, we crash into somebody in a car, use of force incidents, deaths in the jail. A first-party claim is really a property claim. It's a claim against ourselves. When we lose a piece of equipment or damage it, or, you know, back into a telephone pole, it's completely our fault. Or of course, we have water damage or something of that nature to our building or fire. Thanks.
So he kept talking. That's why I have another question. So
You sure I'm trying.
So I want to make sure I heard this right. So you said that you had 40 COVID claims. Was that just in 21?
Yes.
Okay, so for 20 and 19, there was probably more. So I was just trying to figure if we have a total of 2,000 employees and there's 40 claims, but that's just in 21 when things are starting to wind down. Okay,
Right,
thanks.
and actually, if you recall, we didn't get any COVID claims until the fall of 2021. And that's because that's when L&I came up with the presumption of exposure for law enforcement, first
Got it.
responders, detention services.
Yeah, thank you.
So liability claims, again, the first party is property claims. Our frequency or the number of claims decreased by 47%. And the severity decreased by 59%. So we spent $450,000 less in property claims in 2021 than we did in 2020. Still a large section of our property claims that we pay out here for law enforcement vehicle damage. Maybe 10% are somebody else's fault that we can subrogate the money back, but about 90% is us hitting curbs, putting them in a ditch, pit maneuver, those type of things. And the Explorers nowadays aren't like the old Crown Vics, where they were just tanks and you could fix them fairly cheaply, and they just went and went and went. these explorers are expensive. It doesn't take much to total them. And, you know, they run 40 to 50 grand a pop, so. Not cheap. The third party, again, even though the number of claims filed decreased by 30%, we had the $1.59 million payout in 2021 for a lot of those jail deaths and a couple of law enforcement use of force cases.
What was the public works?
Yeah, one huge spike there in public works.
2018.
Oh, yes, that was the case down in Spangle, Waverly Y.
Motorcycle.
Yeah, the motor,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
Where
That
we
was
had the
it, yeah.
largest jury verdict,
yeah.
$14.2 million against the county. And we paid the $500,000 there, and we also paid $500,000 in defense cost for the fella in Chatteroy that the branch of the tree broke off in the windstorm
Right.
and went through his car and impaled him. And even though we got a defense verdict, it was still $500,000 in defense costs there. So just those two were back to back, were $1 million of that.
Thank you.
Risk transfer, that's all of the insurance and the liability costs and so on and so forth that we purchase every year. In 2021, we only had a total of 1% increase, so all the insurance markets and the pool and so on and so forth were pretty flat as far as renewals, and it was a banner year. It was the first time that it had very little increase, and that actually the cost savings of about $60,000 that was a result of the risk pool doing a joint crime insurance policy purchase for all the counties. So what we were paying in crime insurance, we were able to reduce that somewhat by being part of the group purchase. And then I purchased excess coverage because the pool policy only covers up to $2 million. And we have historically had a $5 million per occurrence coverage limit. And I thought that was important for our history.
Who do you use? Is that Zurich? Is there access?
Our excess actually is with Berkeley. The other things I just wanted to talk briefly about was with the risk transfer was the 2022 projections. You know, we had our annual conference and we've been out marketing the insurance market. One of the things is that it's getting very difficult to find insurers that are willing to insure public entities in the state of Washington, Oregon, California, and New Mexico. There's a total of 3 right now. There used to be dozens, and we used to go on marketing trips and be able to pick and choose. But it's just getting so difficult with the kind of social inflation awards that juries are giving, and even the nuclear verdicts are the ones that are over 10 million, like they've seen over in Seattle a couple of times this past year. The forecast for our liability program, not only do we are forced to go to a $3 million SIR at the risk pool level, but the excess coverage above that and the reinsurance costs are going to increase by 30 to 40%. Okay, so Spokane County, our premium was about 2.1 million a year for that coverage with our $500,000 deductible. Our liability program is financially sound, and you know we did the capital modeling study just to make sure that we had the reserves and some equity in that fund so that we could take on this type of volatility without really having a negative impact on the budget. So we kind of planned for that with in the budget, my budget set up a risk management budget for liability where we have an unclassified line item with $1 million in it. And that's because the cost or the premium gets paid October 1st, right? And our budget doesn't start till the next January. We're always 3 months behind it, trying to calculate what it's going to be. This year it was kind of difficult because we didn't anticipate that kind of a rise. We also saw, we're going to see about a 10 to 15% increase in our property insurance. As you know, we have a $500 million per occurrence property policy. And we only have a $25,000 deductible, so it's a very affordable insurance policy. And quite honestly, we don't have very many losses when it comes to our property program. However, it's the building costs for replacement buildings that is causing that 10 to 15% increase. Not only the cost of material, but the cost of shipping and construction and so on and so forth. So we're going to see, not based on losses, but based on replacement cost only, construction cost, about a 10 to 15% increase. That policy range is about $600,000 a year. So again, 10% increase there doesn't light our hair on fire like liability does, but it's still a little bit of a bump. And then our cyber liability program, which is ever evolving with the market. And they're saying about a 25 to 30% increase, and that's across the industry. Doesn't matter if you're public industry or private, that's just what it is because of the sophistication of cyber. Our IT department has done an outstanding job. And quite honestly, I think it's one of the leaders in the state from what I know and what I've seen as far as our protections and our process and our programs coupled with that insurance in case things go real bad. And again, cyber insurance is a bit different. It's a different animal, right? Because what it does is it provides you services, immediate services on how to deal with the press, how to deal with, if there's a ransom, right? And they want a certain amount of money to basically release your system to be unlocked. That's primarily what they're doing. They have experts in that field that they've been negotiating these things around the country for a couple of years now. And they've been very successful at a couple of them saying, we're gonna give you squat. So, it is what it is. But fortunately, there's a cost to rebuild your system because you're locked out of it and you can't do much. Our IT department does an excellent job with backups and secondary systems and other protection about protection. So our data won't be locked where we're completely screwed, quite honestly, of getting anything and being able to function. Lastly, I just want to talk about and brag about my folks a bit. So we, as far as loss control and security, we actually had 454 virtual training classes in 2021. That's compared to about 109 the preceding year. So as we were all going remote and isolating and so on and so forth, a lot of folks were taking advantage of virtual training classes. As a matter of fact, the risk pool put on 24 different training classes that our employees were able to attend. And we had 175 employees attend at least one of those virtual training. That's outside of what we had for them. Our loss control folks still conducted 114 hazard assessments and facility inspections. I did 55 on-call after hours liability assessments to losses, when either there's a bad car wreck on county roads or we have some property damage or employee involved in a car wreck or something like that. We're 100% compliant to the drug and alcohol testing program that we manage, which was a bit more challenging because of people being gone and out on COVID, so on and so forth protocols. So when the random pool comes up, the name gets drawn. Obviously, if they're sick or they're not at work, then they get a bye basically. But it means we just have to draw more names and it's a bit more challenging. We were able to replace all of the rooftop CCTV cameras that support the Rig 9 TV cameras and stuff in case there's a incident in or around the campus. They can bring up that facility over the public safety building so they can get all different kind of angles, which quite honestly during the protests and so on and so forth that we saw previously, those were absolutely instrumental. Trying to make sure they understood what was going on and who was doing what. We did, if you remember, we did launch that pilot program early in 2021 to try to see if we could persuade or help with the homeless situation on the campus. We had some positive results, but it certainly didn't accomplish what we were hoping it would accomplish. And we did update the juvenile screening station where we added the x-ray machine that they haven't had for a lot of years. So now they have both a x-ray machine and a magnetometer at their screening station, which was a big improvement. And yeah, we continue to do these building security and vulnerability assessments. So keep moving forward, get a lot of them done this year.
Awesome.
So any other questions?
I think you guys sound like you're doing a great job. And, I know it's been, adjusting on the fly for a lot of things, as we've over the last 2 years. So appreciate all your work and energy that you put into it.
Thank you very much. I have to tip my hat to Ashley too, my new boss. She's it's nice having somebody who understands safety and security and big picture stuff, and I can bounce ideas off of it, and she keeps me hopping. So I really, really appreciate that. It's been a real nice addition.
Great. Well, thank you all for what you're doing.
Certainly. Put up. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. You're running just a little behind, so we will get to Heather.
Oh,
Good morning, Commissioners. Just to update you this morning on our 2022 JAG application. It's that time of year again. 2022 is our year to apply. Our award this year is set to be $180,880, split between us and the city. The sheriff's office will receive $40,400 or $698 of that they intend to use for tactical gear and equipment. The prosecutor's office will use their $40,698 to pay for 60% of one FTE support staff position. It's a full FTE, but they want to pay for 12 months, so they use that 60%. And then Spokane County will also get $18,088 for admin expenses.
Okay, so on the second page, it says the county agrees prosecution, and then the sheriff's office is using it for equipment.
Yeah,
And the city's getting 81,000.
yeah, they're getting $81,396, and they're also using it toward equipment.
But this is something we've had before.
Exactly.
Just an
The MOU's just been updated to change the dates and update the amounts.
Great. Thank you.
We submitted the actual formal JOG application on August 8th, which was the due date. And the memorandum of understanding that I handed you is the same MOU we used for years. The city does have it. I believe they're set to execute it today or tomorrow, and then it will come back before you during a normal 2 p.m. meeting for execution.
yeah, the applicant changes every year from the city to the county, the city to the county, and then we split the proceeds.
That's correct. So that every other year we get the admin cost, and then on the odd years they will.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got us back on track.
Tony said you can join in via Zoom.
I sent them the information last Friday.
Right, see in the pan.
Are they on the,
And what, there might be, there is, okay.
Good morning.
Good
Commissioners.
morning, Tony. Go ahead. And it's time for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for your time today. Really no formal action required. Just wanted to keep you guys in the loop on a change that we're working through. So the background on this change right now, we do a competitive solicitation for architecture and engineering related services. So we do what's called a master contract or an on-call contract. And it's for all departments to use. Right now we have 11 of them. And in the current state, $75,000 and below, we are able to immediately award services that were already bid in these master or on-call contracts and get them out. What we're hearing from facilities and parks and recreation, two of our biggest users of this on-call service, is that we're getting increased contracts, increased project costs between 75,000 and they've requested 125,000 as the new threshold. Background on that too as well. If right now, if a service is above 75,000, we have to go through anywhere between a 6 and 10 week process for an RFQ. You guys actually approve it twice. You approve the RFQ document, and then again, you approve the award of it. So for departments that, 2 to 3 month time frame is not ideal when they have, quick response time needed and large projects that they need to get done quickly. So what we're hearing again is that from Bruce Russell gave us the specific recommendation in a letter is that we move the on-call threshold from 75,000 to 125,000. So that's what we are putting forth in a resolution next week.
Any questions? I do. So going from 75 to 125, I guess I'm curious as to how many times we would need to do that. How many times have we had to go out to bid? And I guess part of my concern is having the board be aware of what's going on and what's happening. Because if it's going to be $125,000 in architectural fees, that's a pretty big project that I think the board would want to be aware of. And so considering Scott only has authority up to 50,000. So we can kind of monitor and know what's happening on bigger dollar items. That's my concern and my question.
Gotcha. And a clarification on that, you guys would still get visibility to those. You would see them when we go to award the services.
Right, but at that point, it's already kind of too late. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out where's kind of that happy medium.
Yep, and this is not in concrete either. That's why I wanted to run this through with you guys. If you're not comfortable with 125, we're flexible. It's just, as you guys have heard probably 1,000 times before, the material cost, labor costs are rising, and we haven't adjusted our threshold since 2017. So,
but that doesn't hold true for architects. So being married to a contractor, that holds true for construction. But on architects, they're already, they don't have material costs involved. It's their personal time, their professional service. So that's why I'm just trying to figure out what the real need is, what we're really asking here. So I guess I just have lots more questions. And then if we were to choose to go to 125, I would want somewhere in there that if we're going to go above, 75,000 to 125 in that range, that it would come before the commissioners just to be informed prior to it, getting actually awarded out there. Because I just think if you're going to use $125,000 of architectural services, that means that this is a pretty good sized project that we should be aware of before we even go down that path of spending that kind of money if the board hasn't, isn't okay with the full project. So,
Okay, yeah. And we can get back with our customers who would be really facilities and parks here and relay that information back to them, see if they're comfortable with a different dollar amount. And yeah, are there any other specific questions that we can dig into? And we'll, of course, push this out to a future consent agenda date past next week.
thank you. Commissioner
Yeah.
French?
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Cooney. I mean, this roster is supposed to handle small projects that were needed on the campus and stuff. And as we grow the size of the fees, we're growing the size of the projects. I just wonder, are we administratively just allowing large projects to get by the board that we're not aware of and stuff? So I agree with Commissioner Cooney 100%. I'm not sure what the driver is to raise it from 75 to 125. The cost of the CAD system didn't increase. Cost of labor didn't increase. I mean, just, I'm challenged by it,
Yeah, especially on the architectural side.
especially on the architectural side. For the record, I'm not eligible to apply for this, so I just want to make sure that people understand.
Tony, a couple of questions. This is Scott.
Yep.
For the commissioner's benefit, is this a procurement driven resolution that's being requested to change how we procure these? And then the second part of that is, are they individual contracts or are there multiple contracts that can be used up to that threshold of 75 for on-call services?
So the first question, this was a request kicked over to us, and we're now trying to work on behalf of our customers. So again, the purchasing is not trying to get around rules or anything. We are just relaying the information that we're getting, that there's been a spike in these and that we are now increasing the amount of time for our customers to get what they need. And the second part, so there's a master contract and it's per project. So per individual project, $75,000 and below would be able to informally be awarded at this point.
Okay, so I think being able to have your clients, our other departments provide data around, or even if you have it, around number of contracts, frequency, and some trending to help the commissioners look at 2 years ago, there were 5 contracts that were 75 and under and only 1 above that. And now there's 8 above it and only 2, just something that shows trending, and then perhaps what might be driving some of those increases, so that they can see what the data is behind it to support a change request.
Yep, we can do that.
Great, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Like I said, just some questions surrounding it. And I know, there's difference between, and the small works roster is also some construction stuff, but, even, 75,000, going over 75,000 is a bigger project, for us too. So yeah, I think getting that data and stuff would be very helpful. Mr. French.
Yeah, the other unintended consequence that I've seen in similar situations is that when you raise the cap, prices drive to the cap. And so, if the firms know that they've got a cap of 75 to be able to avoid the bidding process, it's amazing how they come in at 74,999. We raise the cap and it'll give incentive to also raise the cost. So, and I know, Tony, that you're the messenger and stuff. So, we're not personalizing this to you.
No. Not at all. So,
No, I fully understand. I appreciate it. We'll dig into it for you guys.
okay, thank you. I hear a dog in the background.
Don't trip. Don't stand up.
Perfect. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, next that's going to take us to Gary. Hi, Gary. And Tessa.
Tessa's gonna be handing
Bring
out some
bigger
materials that we want to review with you guys today. And just give you kind of an update of where we are in terms of projecting some of our major revenue flows in relation to sales tax and also property tax. And then to take a look at some other revenue sources and where we think they might come in and what availability we'll have for future years. So if you want to take a look at that first chart, we'll start off with sales tax. And this is probably one of the more difficult areas to look into a crystal ball and say, where will we be at this time next year or at the end of next year for budgetary purposes. When we started out adopting our budget in 2022, this was back in 21, we had budgeted 68,500,000. And our latest projections show that we'll probably end the year in about 73 million, which is substantially greater than what we had budgeted. And that's good news. We were conservative on our budgeting estimates last year because of uncertainty. And of course, there's a lot of uncertainty going forward too in the economy. But as we're looking at future years and projecting out forecasts for 23, 24, 25, we're looking at some minor increases from the projected 73 million to go up to the 74,460 for next year for budgetary purposes. There's a breakdown that shows the different categories below there, be broken down by public service, juvenile jail, criminal justice, regular sales tax, and total sales tax revenues on that bottom line. Tessa, would you like to add anything to that slide?
I'll just kind of couple that with the next slide, which does show kind of our trend line for sales tax growth. We have seen, like Gary said, absolutely wild growth, but we do think that we're going to kind of stabilize here into right around 2%. Our historical average going back to the year 2000 has been a 3.89% growth rate, which is really great. But the odds of that going into next year with inflation and other things, I think we're going to kind of hold ourselves more accountable to the 2% growth rate for next year.
And what's driving the 2% number?
When we looked at some of the state data that they've published, they're settling closer to 2% as well, 1.92% on some things. So we don't want to jump too high because if we oversell ourselves, then we're in a precarious position next year. We do think that we will have growth as opposed to a negative growth next year based on our in-migration, people moving to our community. Will continue to keep us bumping a little bit. So that's kind of how we settled around 2%.
Okay. And there was talk too, with the major banks and economists coming out and saying that there might be a mild recession expected in mid 23. So you're kind of weighing, should we err on the lower side or the higher side? And for budgetary purposes, it looked like we're probably better off with a figure around 74.5 million. For budgetary purposes. So, that's a good conversation to have and seeing if you guys are comfortable with that number, if you think it should be higher or lower.
Go ahead and finish yours.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, this is the first seeing it, so I will be inquiring and making some inquiries as to what others are looking at as well, and kind of what some of the economists that I know, what their thoughts are. For sales tax, so.
Sure, and a good portion of what we look at, is locally, but some things are affecting us nationally too. NACO is a good source for some of that, so is the GFOA, and then the state Office of Financial Management gives some good guidance on it.
So do we have any sense from a permitting standpoint, what kind of pace we're at for permits? Or construction, because I know a good part of the sales tax growth we've seen is because we've still enjoying some really nice projects. But from what I understand, home builders are slowing down. They're catching up with the inventory, and I'm not aware of any big projects that are coming online for next year. So I wonder, construction sales tax revenue, where's that trending to?
Well, it's a smaller component of the whole picture a little bit, so, yeah, that area could fluctuate higher or lower. And I don't think it had substantially changed the 74.5 million in total that we have there, because it kind of is conservative. So with those permits, like you're saying, coming down, I think that would take that into account if we did realize a slower building process.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm hearing like the residential is starting to slow down.
Yeah.
But commercial properties sales are still,
Pacing out.
yeah, happening quite well. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting.
I think as price of materials come down, hopefully more.
Yeah.
Some of that residential will not plateau too flat.
I think interest rates are part of what's driving it, not
Yeah.
so much the cost of materials anymore. It's that interest rate cost for the consumer.
And it's so hard to figure out what the Fed's gonna do, like they jumped it, 3/4 of a point, and they're talking about doing another 3/4 of a point increase maybe before the end of this month.
No,
So that borrowing rate
Yeah.
goes up.
so I think we're gonna see the housing market. I mean, I know someone who put a house on the market like 3 weeks ago and they haven't even had an offer,
Yep.
so it's
Inventories are extending
Change.
now.
with interest rates going up. I mean, it's just harder then for people to get into a home.
Well, that and we're still seeing leakage out into the Rafter Prairie area for new home construction, and that's going to get even worse next June when the Building Code Council finishes its damage to the state. So it's next year will be an interesting year.
I think the graph that the team put together is really insightful to give you all some perspective of where we historically trend. If you look back a little over 20 years, I think in a typical year, perhaps we use that for the forecast, but with all the uncertainty around inflation, recession, consumer price, purchasing power, different things like that, the lack of the stimulus dollars that were driving a lot of the growth, I think in 2021. It's difficult to project, and 2% certainly conservative, and this just a placeholder for the time being. That would be anticipated in the initial preliminary budget roll up the 1st of September. But we'll certainly learn more as we go through the next couple of months, and it may be appropriate to adjust. I think this just kind of gives a sense of where the historical trends are, and as best of a crystal ball that we have, and a couple of touch points with some economists that are helping to give some ideas of where the state and others are projecting at.
And last year we had negative growth on sales tax was back in 2012. And if everyone was predicting at the start of COVID in 2020, everyone would have predicted double-digit declines in sales tax at that time. Remember when we first met talking about falling off the cliff? So I think it's a lot more stable than, thankfully, than a lot of other municipalities and cities are dealing with the volatility of their sales tax. So I think we're fortunate here in that we're seeing more steady type of sustained growth.
I mean, the 20-year projection is 8 kg, you'd be asking for. Because it's not that bad.
So moving on from the sales tax, Tessie, you want to walk us through our projections on general fund property tax?
Yeah, so as we know, property tax has some fun ways to calculate it, and we always rely heavily on our assessor group to make sure we get our calculations accurate by the time we certify our levy in November. This is just an estimate, especially for that new construction line, that is based predominantly on last year's new construction values. So we'll see that hopefully won't erode too much, but can stay pretty steady. So we start with our 2022 levy amount, and then we add on no 1%. New construction increases. We have not assumed any increase in the state assessed value at this time, and no road levy shift at this time as well. So we added very little to our property tax base to calculate the 2023 highest lawful limit there. And then we divide it by the total assessed value for the whole county, 86 billion with a B. Multiply that times $1,000, and that gives us our levy rate per $1,000 of assessed value. Right now, it's projected to be at 73 cents
Per thousand.
per $1,000. What was it last year? It was 99 cents. So we included that chart down below that kind of shows what the historical rates have been per $1,000. And so 21 was $1.07, 99 cents for this year. And then going into next year, we're looking even lower at 73 cents.
And highest lawful, of course, is $1.80 per thousand.
Well, the important message, Colin, for the readers out there is that at the current projection rate with the assumptions that you made, they'll actually, from a county tax standpoint, be a reduction in the taxes, not an increase in the taxes, regardless of what their assessed valuation is.
Certainly, yes, it's 73 cents per thousand. We're one of the lowest assessed counties in the state.
Did you get that? Okay.
Typing
just
feverishly.
making sure.
And again, the two key assumptions right now is some initial feedback from the commissioners. Let's see what our budget looks like without taking a 1%. And let's see what the budget looks like without doing the road levy shift. But certainly those are items that can still be evaluated as we go through the budget process, just the initial preliminary roll-ups to see what our general fund actually looks like when it all comes together.
Yes, I would like to know what those two numbers would be though. Just because I think citizens again think that when we get 1%, it's a lot of money and it's not.
It's like $600,000.
Yeah, $600,000 to the entire county is what a 1% increase does. So it's just,
Very low,
Yeah.
so we shouldn't take it. So if it's only 600,000, then why are we taking it, Mary?
no, I'm just saying for informational purposes.
Yeah.
That's a question I get, and so I always just like to know what the number is on that, as well as I'd like to know what the road levy shift number would be as well.
Maximum, okay, yeah, we'll get that.
If we went up to the maximum $1.80, we'd probably realize about 130 to 140 million in property taxes versus the
We went
63,
to the highest lawful that we could actually do.
just to put it in dollar perspective.
I'm certainly hoping not to have to take the 1% this year. So
It's easy to do more than the hope. We can just vote no on it. Doesn't happen.
you could tell Ozzy all those sheriffs that he wouldn't have if we hadn't done it, so.
And so the 2022 column on this sheet here does not include the road levy shift that we did take in 2022. And that was about $6.275 million. And the majority of that money went to roads this year. We've already sent them half of their money, but we'll send them their second half when we get towards October. And that was about $4.2 million that went back to roads.
Well, and I just know that Public Works County Roads, I mean, they've got because of the stabilization center taking over part of their building, we've got the Wilbur Fault property that we need to figure out how we're funding that. And so that may be, looking at the road levy shift could be a means to do it for capital. That is one-time money that could go to help with that facility to take care of getting that facility built for them.
Yeah, and that's a good appropriate use of one-time type of expenditure just for that purpose.
Well, and if your projection for 22 becomes reality, and I hope it does, there's another 4.5 million there that we weren't banking on that can carry forward into 2023 and help carry or address some of the costs that you're concerned about and stuff. So, there might there's room to wiggle, I guess, to try and meet all of our needs and still not look at a property tax increase.
And that would be appropriate to cue that up toward the end of the
Right.
budgetary process. Anyway. So
Right.
one of those last pieces of the puzzle.
Right, but that's why just kind of knowing what the amount is and what effect that would have, you know, just all the different scenarios, so we can make an informed decision.
So we can add a column here next to the 2023 calc that shows if they were taken, what would the amounts be?
If you took one and not the other, if you did, you know, 1% and not the road share, you know, just all those different.
Yeah, sensitize it a little bit with some different numbers.
We'll work up those options for you.
Because I think, I don't know, county roads, as they're doing their budget, how much I think they're like 6 million short on the Lower Ball property to do it.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's why they were counting on some road levy shift. So
They
that
were
they would,
hoping for it. They're not, they're hoping for it, but I mean, I think that's something we need to think about, because again, we did take that property away. So it's benefiting the community.
And we can share that too when we get into, sorry,
Go ahead.
when we get into the capital conversation, we can give a view of what that project is anticipated to be, what funding they have to date for, what their gap is. So it gives you some information on evaluating that decision.
Well, and I was just gonna comment, I mean, you know, this kind of fiscal, conservative fiscal look is one of the reasons why we've got the highest credit rating a county our size can have and stuff. So I mean, you know, this didn't come easy. A lot of hard decisions that had to be made to get us here, but, you know, just thanks for, you know, continuing that conservative approach.
So next slide, we have, and the following slides concentrate on some different specific taxes. So Tessa, do you want to lead us through the narratives on that?
Yeah, and all of these are non-general fund taxes, so we're kind of broken out of the general fund now. And we're gonna start with mental health sales tax, which is 1/10 of 1% on retail sales for mental health, chemical dependency treatment, program services, court programs, various therapeutic options. And so this tax performs identical to the juvenile jail sales tax that comes into the general fund. So juvenile jail sales tax is 1/10 of 1% that we get in its entirety. And then we get the mental health and emergency communications. So all those taxes will have the same assumption carried through. For the revenue, we put mental health sales tax a couple years ago into its own separate fund. So it is now earning a fund balance that we're tracking. It earns interest. And so right now we're looking with a beginning fund balance of about $3.2 million for that fund, adding about 15.5 million, very healthy revenues going into next year. And then we've got kind of all of our various uses. And if you'll go to the second page there, we have kind of a detailed accounting of the different programs that are supported. So detention services has a methadone program, inmate substance abuse services that they provide and contract for, and then mental health services that is a staff team in the jail that provide mental health support to inmates. And this is based off of their budget submission that we did receive. So everybody was very timely in getting that information to us. So they're requesting about $1.3 million to run that program going into 2023. Next, we have the district court mental health therapeutic court. And district court, we allocated judges time to operate that court. And so that is unique compared to the superior courts that we'll talk about in a second. They also we fund public defender and prosecutor time to enhance this as an option for people. If it's the right option, let's put them into a treatment court as opposed to other options that we may have. We also have an interlocal agreement with the City of Spokane prosecutor to have them be incentivized to put people into the district court mental health court as well. So it's more of a regional court as opposed to just unincorporated county. Then we have the Superior Court Therapeutic Court, and they have two different court options. They have a mental health court, and then they have a co-occurring drug court. And Superior Court operates those more contractually with wraparound services as opposed to judge time. And then public defender and prosecutor, again, to incentivize people. Yeah,
Can I, so we pay the city of Spokane prosecutor to send people through our therapeutic courts?
Mhm.
Why do we pay them? Why wouldn't they be paying us to utilize our therapeutic
It's
courts?
part of the mental health 1/10 money, which is across the city pays it as well as the county.
But we pay them to come utilize our services.
it's an incentive to get people through that program as opposed to jail time or other options.
Okay. But they have like their own community court that sort of operates as, wouldn't they just run them through the community court as opposed to more dockets or more cases coming through our therapeutic? That I don't know why we would pay them.
And we pay them on a case by case basis. So if they
Okay.
don't refer anyone, they get no money.
Okay.
So maybe that helps a little, but
Is this to reimburse their prosecutor time
yeah,
to represent their clients in the therapeutic court?
Yep.
And the therapeutic court is more intensive, targeted work than a community court might be. So
Okay.
I don't believe they operate a therapeutic court at the municipal court level.
and yeah, this is the option to keep it out from, instead of them creating their own therapeutic court and requesting money to operate an entire court, we can instead have them kind of kiddied into the district court, therapeutic court.
Okay.
It'd be a valid use of 1/10 money.
Mhm.
If even within the city of Spokane to pay it. So question on the Superior Therapeutic Court, why is the prosecutors so low?
They have a split based on kind of the number of people. It's one of those historic, 80% supports district court, 20% supports Superior Court from the prosecutor's perspective.
It just seems like they may need to take a look at that and see what the real cost is, so that way the reimbursement is coming from the right sources.
Yeah. We can absolutely review that with them.
Since all the others are much higher and that one's,
It could be an opportunity to level it a little bit.
yeah.
So the crisis stabilization facility doesn't get any money out of the 1%.
It is not forecasted to at this time for 2023.
Okay, and then the therapeutic professionals that do the ride along with the sheriff, they're included in the sheriff's budget.
Correct. The state has provided grant funding for that.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing them somewhere.
Yep, no, thank you. Yeah, and if that grant funding ever did face a shortfall or a shift, this would probably be our first best option to keep that program running.
Tessa, do you see or expect there to be a drop in that dollar amount for the drug court? Just because of the changes in state law and essentially, essentially
is a
drugs
very
are
good-
legal now in Washington state. Is that court even gonna be utilized by anybody? Because the number of folks that actually get a drug charge is almost nobody anymore. So,
I don't know if it's as much based on a drug charge as it is maybe they've committed another crime and have a co-occurring mental health treatment, substance abuse issue that's causing them to potentially commit other crimes. And that's the reason they're in the court program, as opposed to just being a drug offense. But we'll look into that and
Yeah.
find out. We'll have Ashley maybe come and speak a little more about what
Okay.
those courts, what differentiates them and what services they provide and who their clientele is.
okay, yeah, I just don't know if that's gonna be utilized as heavily as it once was, because I know with a lot of those folks, the most, or the highest level of charge was a felony drug charge. But with there essentially being no felony drug charges anymore, the highest charge could be a misdemeanor, and they may not even be going through a superior court now. So I don't know.
Ashley Callan, as I recall, she did highlight that there might be a difference in need in there, meaning a reduced need. So.
And it may switch between the two.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll review that with her. Thank you for that comment. We also fund a mental health professional and pretrial services, and that program has been highly valued and has seen some good successes in keeping people kind of on track in the pretrial world. We then have the Involuntary Treatment Act Court, or ITA, and that is your civil commitment hearings that have to happen within the first so many hours, 72 hours, I believe, of being involuntarily committed to a mental health facility. And so we have Superior Court commissioners that run those courtrooms, public defenders to help the client's prosecution team under Mark, and then clerk staff to run the court program itself.
So which then leads me to, is there clerk time that we should be adding to those other courts?
That is a good question.
There's one person who operates that ITA court through the courts, as far as I know. So I don't know if it needs to be increased.
No, in the other ones, like in the therapeutic court, there's no clerk information there for that and for it being the Superior Court one, because district court would be a different.
That would be bundled into their program, yeah.
Great highlight. Is that contemplate the increase in our ITA position?
It should, but I will verify.
I know you had
Yeah,
recently.
We recently, well, we have an opening. We haven't filled it, but they're increasing the ITA court to also include substance abuse treatment or SUD treatment, stuff like that. So we'll see an increase in that work. Even though we historically had, I think, 5 people in there, and while I've been operating, we've had 3, we're going up to 4. So we're still trying to keep that fiscal restraint there, but it is going to be some more work. Just that's why you're seeing an increase.
And I guess, you know, what would be helpful is to see what these numbers were for 2021. Or, you know, as we're looking to. I guess, is this our actual to date for 2022? Or is this?
This is all
budget?
2023 budget. And we left off 2022's budget as a comparison, like you'll see on some of the rest of these sheets here. We were trying to give some more visibility into this tax. And previously we had given a large allotment to community services up to about $8 million. And part of that was they paid the general fund back for this ITA court program, and at a cost per case, so not 100% reimbursement, but at a rate that they determined and calculated. And so we were hoping to shift and have instead this tax pay directly the general fund for the exact amount that is used by these court programs for 100% cost reimbursement. Because some years we make money, some years we lose money from community services on that program. So we just think this would give more visibility as to what we're funding with that. And then we've kind of right-sized what the community services allocation looks like.
Yeah, which I'm all okay with, but I think it's trying to figure out, yeah, what those courts were costing. To know that these numbers are, you know, good numbers to, you know, as we've asked people to, you know, kind of keep with their budgets and all of that, it's like, I mean, I want to know kind of where we're at with the, you know, these items as well. And knowing like, you know, some of these things probably need to increase, like adding the clerk. And I don't know why the prosecutor's numbers so low, but, you know, want to make sure we're being realistic, but we also know where we're coming from.
Perfect, we can do that.
Tessa, would we anticipate that doing that approach on ITA would be a benefit, meaning reduced administrative costs of going one direction, going back another direction, just keep it here, reduce the amount of administrative burden that's associated with that?
Yep, yeah, it would save community services all the time that they spend calculating the rate, pulling the information out of the general fund, reviewing it, number of cases, things like that. Instead, it's a very simple journal voucher that our office can enter and settle it up at the end of the year, halfway through the year, end of the year, 2 times if we need to. And then we've got our community services, administrative services organization, and the different programs that they run. We looked at a 3-year historical average of what they've been spending out of their tax monies. And so they provide court evaluators to the Superior Court and District Court, I believe, through Frontier Behavioral Health as a contract. They provide various residential treatment and housing for behavioral mental health clientele. And then we have inpatient mental health treatment for folks that are not Medicaid eligible. And then there's a technology fee for getting access to some of those inpatient records and things, and the way they have to run their programs at community services that we pay for.
Second, so Mike Sparber, you've got a question for us.
Yeah, hey Tessa, have you heard anything from Frontier about their getting out of the involuntary commitment process? Or because there was some talk about that they were gonna have they were gonna pull out from that and have someone else do it. But have you talked to them recently, or is there a current contract on that?
I have not heard anything about any contract changes.
I
Okay.
have not either, so that would be really good to talk to Kathleen.
Okay. Yeah, I might do a little digging in that just to see where that's at, Tessa, and then I'll get back to you on that part of it.
Thank you.
Because I know some of the counties that have gone to an independent contractor for their administrative health, administrative BHASO, Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization. I mean, those organizations have been getting almost all the 1/10 money into those organizations. So, I mean, I think that's part of the reason having our community services continue to be our BHASO is good for our citizens and for our county. So we're still in control of those funds instead of it all just going to a for-profit entity. Because that's what I've heard in several of the counties that have gone to that for-profit entity. And so, so I think, we're really managing these funds, in the best interest of our citizens and the needs of our county.
And then we left $6.1 million. So all of the remaining available revenue that's reoccurring, available for use. So that could be spent on any other programs. So we'll follow up with the clerk and the prosecutor, see if we have any other perceived contract changes. We'll double check on Mark's ITA attorneys. And then we'll circle back to you with some historical figures for comparison's sake as well.
Mike Sparber. One thing just to look at for detention services is the, are we capturing all the costs that are occurring within detention services? I think we are, but just be good to evaluate that to make sure that there's nothing that we're missing for potential reimbursable activities.
Was that a question for me, Josh, or Scott? I
Yes.
got a call from Randy Bischoff in the middle of this, sorry.
Yep, just asking to take a look at the detention services usage of the 1/10. Make sure we're capturing all the activities that we experience over there, and are we capturing and reimbursing the right amounts? Are there other things that we are seeing emerging that could be eligible for this?
Okay, and I'll also take a look at pretrial services too as well.
Great.
So the bottom line takeaway on this is that the board will have discretionary uses for that 6.1 million based upon the predicated estimates that we have right now off of the 23 budget. And that could change again as we look at escalating costs in those certain categories, but you'd still be around the $5 to $6 million range.
Well, and I know part of that, I don't think it's happened yet, but we're looking at that pilot project for mental health within the homeless providers. That is a gap between what the MCOs are paying and what healthcare authority. And so trying to show as the healthcare authority has changed and as the BHASO, we're kind of responsible for those gaps. And so, just knowing that some of these gaps are starting to arise as we've made this shift, those are going to be some of the things that we need to be making sure that we're working with community services on what those gaps are and how we're funding those.
Alrighty, up next, everyone's favorite, REIT 1 and 2. REIT 1, 0.25% on the selling price of real property sales. It has been through the roof impressive on our REIT actual received. These both worksheets show comparative budget data. So 2022 budget and 2023 budget projections. We are not gonna rock REIT as great as we have been going into the future. I don't think. I think, like you guys were saying earlier, retail sales are gonna slow drastically. So we've made some conservative estimates there. REIT 1 going into 2023, we have fairground debt, scraps debt, and then small arms range debt. We'll finally get to make our first payment maybe December this year, but probably just all next year. So that is nice that we've been able to build up quite a balance in REIT 1. So we have some good savings there to the tune of almost $11 million. REIT 2, we've been spending like madmen on parks projects. We've got golf Meadowwood irrigation debt that falls off at the end of this year, 2022. We have golf debt service that continues. Parks repairs, we try to fund $100,000 in miscellaneous general fund parks repairs, reimbursed to the actual cost each year. In 2022, we have the Latah Creek remodel that we're finishing up for the parking lot repairs, ballpark repairs, finishing up some weatherization out at the Avista Stadium, Bear Lake, finishing the shoreway erosion, and then Liberty Lake Phase 1 renovation, some money going out the door on that project. So we don't have any projects earmarked yet for REIT 2, and we will bring those when we bring our 6-year capital plan and potential uses of REIT 2 once we get our budget roll up completed by September 6th. So there'll be more decisions on REIT 2 specifically going into the fall here. Next,
So I'm gonna ask the
Yeah.
obvious question. So why is the ending fund balance not the same as the beginning fund balance?
That was my question.
on
Both reads.
Yeah. So if you look at the end of 22, it should carry up to the beginning of.
yes,
23.
it should have, because that was budget, not actuals, and the 23 is based on beginning fund balance is based on actual.
But we're not at actual yet. I mean, it's still, so.
From 21 with a roll forward. So we brought in like almost double of our estimate in 2021. So we brought in twice as much money as we spent, and we did not spend much money because we have not started the small arms range project.
Right.
So
But in 2022, you're still saying, so if we go to REIT 1.
Yep.
At the end of 22, you're saying that's your estimated ending fund balance which should match your estimating beginning fund balance for 23.
based on the budget that we made in 2021.
So I would do some kind of line item for adjusting that to say
Additional revenue.
Yes, we planned on budget, and yeah, it's
additional 2022 items, whatever, just so that those numbers can.
It's a good catch by a CPA, right? The ending balance has to.
Jim's not.
Well, I think- I
I'm
think
not a
that's-
CPA.
that's-
I'm just an Indian.
Yes, no, that's that's the difference a year can make for revenue, is that some of these, our revenue estimates going into 2022 and 2021 were drastically different than how we're looking now,
But-
building fund balances and stuff.
And the other thing you can do is just do a separate column. Here was the budgeted 2022. Here's what we estimate 2022 to be. Yeah. So that way you can show the changes.
Next, we have hotel motel tax. Beginning and ending fund balance tie here, Jeff. No, good catch. We were building frantically this morning, so I do apologize for that. The major reason for the increased tax revenue on hotel motel tax is again, when we were making the estimates in 2021 for 2022's budget, we did not think we would have hotel sales as strong as they have been. So we have increased that estimate going into 2023 based on revenue performance, and people are coming and staying here again, which is really great news. We do get 2% on the sale of a hotel room night. And we can use this for various tourism marketing related items or capital expenditures related to those kinds of facilities. So we have on track for next year to pay for the Avista concession debt. That is debt that was established years and years and years ago.
Yeah, could you expand on that definition? You know, it's actually a Vista Stadium.
Yes.
And so we're not paying a Vista Corporation anything for their concessions. It's actually a Vista Stadium. That can be misleading.
Yes. Usually we call it ballpark because it's just our little ballpark.
Works great.
I think that's, yeah, Kelly.
Yeah.
And in 2022, we did fund the Sports County USA logo program out of these funds. And we don't have any other projects like that I know of yet for next year, but if there are some, Jared, that you become aware of, this is a good tax for anything related to tourism marketing. Next, we have car rental tax.
So before you jump on to that, for the hotel motel tax, and you know, we don't have anything allocated for that moving forward, and just want to throw out an idea for conversation purposes, and I'm not really campaigning for it because I don't even know that it's a good idea or something, but I know that some of the events that have been traditionally large regional events like Hoop Fest and Bloomsday and stuff like that have been impacted by increased costs from the city for security and stuff like that. And since they're regional, I wonder if maybe some of this might help a couple of those organizations to cover some of those costs and stuff. I don't know whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. It just popped in my head. So, you know, there could be some really downfall to that. But just, you know, we're always looking for opportunities to support tourism. Yeah. Maybe that's an opportunity. I don't know.
Possibly. Yeah, because the city's been trying to sort of use those events kind of as a big
Revenue generator.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something to explore maybe.
We have something to think about, but I'm kind of like, depending on how the city is handling those. Yeah.
And I totally get it. I mean, part of my hesitation is I don't want to be in a position to where we're subsidizing the city's programs, you know, because they get all the revenue out of this thing. We get very little revenue, but they really get the lion's share of the revenue, and they ought to use that to cover their costs. But just an idea, you know, I don't even know if it's a good idea or not, but
We want to support good decisions, maybe that is.
yeah, just, you know, not this money grabbing.
So what about, like, you know, when we did the stuff that we're doing for like the aeronautical thing that was over in Coeur d'Alene, and like Unity in the community when we helped sponsor, can that come out of these funds instead of the general fund? And those aren't big dollar amounts, but they're promoting tourism and you know, the economic development and.
About $1,000 to $1,500 a pop.
Right. So I know if
Is
those.
that stuff that can come out of this?
Potentially, yeah. And one other idea related to the TPA money is they usually give small grants out of TPA money. Visit Spokane coordinates that. And sometimes those are events like Hoop Fest or things that do drive folks. So those funds could potentially be pushed over here as well. So yeah, there's a few different options and
Over
opportunities.
there, Al.
What's that?
What's the conference over in Coeur d'Alene that you attend?
Oh, it's the NWACS Aeronautical Industry Conference. Yeah, it's, they call it
The I-90
I-90.
corridor.
Yeah.
I-90 Corridor
something.
Aerospace. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't really know if that's a tourism
Maybe not.
type event, but. No,
Yeah, but you know,
it's more
but-
economic development than tourism.
yeah, but to follow up on Mary's, I mean, you know, if, what would happen if we used that fund to help fund our contributions to the chambers? Because the chambers are all about economic development theoretically and promoting the region and stuff. Is there any logical link between those and stuff? So we take that out of the general fund and put it in here. I don't know, just brainstorming.
But again, it's tourism.
Yeah,
related.
no, yeah.
And so. I don't know.
There is a tourism ARP category also. I know the city did put some towards what you were saying, Commissioner French, their large event extra cost.
Right.
Well, definitely like unity in the community, because I think we do a sponsorship there, wouldn't be able to come out of here. I don't know, Jared, if there's other things like that, then, but, you know, just, I don't know, as you know, stuff thinking out loud.
Yeah. Well, and you know, we've, how about the MAC?
See, that I think would be a much stronger argument to
Yeah.
use this on the MAC, because that actually does, when they have a large exhibit, that does bring people from out of the region. I don't think we get a lot of people traveling here for tourism for unity in the community.
No, but
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 but the MAC, I mean, they track that. I mean, I think they might even ask you when you come in, they say, what's your zip code? And they type that in, so they can kind of track that people are traveling here for those exhibits, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
great idea.
Certainly, since we've got a nice fund balance there.
Perfect, we'll look into some other opportunities. Car rental tax. A unique tax that when you rent a car, it can only be used on amateur sports and amateur sports facilities. The nexus there is challenging to me, but somebody did it somewhere.
So is that like the Seahawks?
Anyone but.
For
Yeah.
For that reason, right?
Yeah.
This tax was hit hard during the pandemic and it dropped significantly. But we really worked with our partners, both general fund partners and Spokane Sports Commission to manage not overspending our revenue receipts. So that was great. And the taxes picked up nicely and back in the $500,000 range. We do have a contract with Spokane Sports Commission, $220,000, depending on our funding availability. And I believe that contract expires the end of 2023. For this funding in particular. Then we have some Avista Stadium ballpark M&O. That's for various repairs and turning the lights on and things like that at the stadium for amateur sports. Then we have our Plants Ferry Sports Stadium M&O. We usually every other year support the Hub Sports Center in redoing their floors out of this fund. And then we, in the past, have provided a subsidy to the Recreation Fund. Going into 2023, Parks and Recreation requested that that subsidy instead be added to Avista Stadium, add it to Avista Stadium instead. To support that program more holistically as opposed to the rec fund. They've had good success in that fund instead.
And did you guys reach out to Phil, the Hub Sports Center? Because I think that there's additional things that they could use money for.
Okay. We
So
can
I
work on
know,
it.
I know it has been every other year in helping with refinishing the indoor courts, but you know, one of them. But I think there's additional needs that they have as well. So they're trying to go to that outdoor facility as well.
Yeah, we'll reach out and see what other opportunities we have in there.
Do we, you, as you stated, this has taken a hit during the pandemic. Where was it prior to the pandemic? What was sort of our dollar amounts there?
It's returned to that.
Oh,
500
we're
half
back to
million. We are back to
okay,
it. Yeah,
we're back
it
to
dropped down
okay.
towards like 200 something thousand
Okay,
In
Okay.
20.
in 20 and 21. But yeah.
all right. Okay, I was just thinking with these kind of large ending fund balance, I mean, should we be maybe putting more money into Plants Ferry? I mean, Doug's always talking about the need for Plants Ferry. I mean, if we're ending with that much money kind of sitting there, should we maybe give a little more to our own facility there? If the need is there, so.
Well, there's that. Then we also have the need for some additional park space and everything
Okay.
for the Growth Management Act. We've got to somehow figure out how we get ourselves back in shape with that.
So yeah, I think any kind of amateur sport facility, softball stuff, things like that. This money goes to support really well.
New pickleball leagues.
It's getting very popular. apparently.
They want more and more courts all over. They're all used.
And then our last one today is our tourism promotion area tax. And we did not provide historical context for this one, knowing that the rules of engagement are changing. City of Spokane Valley pulled out of this tax beginning in 2023. So 2022 is the last year of collections. And I know that Jim Amacio has been working diligently to manage the process of reestablishing the tourism promotion area with the city of Spokane and the city of Cheney, I believe, are the two partners that have to buy into it.
So, just so I'm clear, so this is, the tax comes into Spokane County and then we push it back out. This is what funds Visit Spokane.
Yep.
And
Spokane Sports Commission.
Sports Commission.
They take $50,000 usually off the top and have it be set aside for grants to support tourism attractions. And then 72% goes to Visit Spokane, 28% to Spokane Sports. Just a straight split. We don't think twice about it.
And then we were doing an additional 220,000 to the Sports Commission.
Correct.
Does anyone else do that? I don't know the funding of Sport Commission.
I do not know that either.
Yeah, if you could find that out, does the city, other cities contribute to the Sport Commission, or is it just us? On top of the tax here.
And Tessa,
Mhm.
this TPA is presuming it gets reestablished,
Correct.
our estimates of what it might generate in revenue. And then if the commissioners decide to follow the same funding model as historically, X amount goes to Visit Spokane, X amount goes to Spokane Sports, those would have to more than likely be reestablished with them because the TPA is dissolving at the end of this year. The current structure of the TPA is dissolving.
Yeah, I know the Valley was just getting there because they've got to go through a petition process. I believe the Valley has gotten their petition at like 76% of the hoteliers. So they'll be establishing their own TPA. And when they do that, will that still come through us to go back to them, or does that go just directly to them? Okay.
And so this is kind of erring on the side of just setting up a budget. If everything works out, we have the authority to manage it. And if the area is not reestablished, then it's just kind of floating out there and won't be impactful.
I think it'll be reestablished. Meg and Eric have been doing the circuit going around. From what I understand, I think Cheney just agreed they were going to join. Liberty Lake had been turning they'd essentially been assessing the funds, even though they weren't even a part of the interlocal of the TPA, but for years they've been just giving the money to it. So they, I think, have officially adopted or passed a resolution to join as well. So I think it's going to happen, but but they're up against the timeline because they want to get to that first. They don't want to miss a quarter
Right.
of collection. So
Yeah, I think there's
I
some
don't know if they hit that date or not.
October deadline.
Okay.
To be able to, everything has to be turned into the Department of Revenue by
Yeah.
October something. To be certain.
Does it have to, it has to come to us first, I think.
Correct, yeah.
So I mean, so we need to make sure that we're
Yes.
paying attention to get them on,
Jim is working hard to calculate back those dates to manage that
Sounds
deadline.
okay, great. Did not want to miss that for them.
Nope, he's on top of it.
And I will tell you, Meg has raved about how incredible Amacio has been. Like anytime I see her, she is like, we love Jim Amacio. He's such a hard worker. He's incredible. He's keeping us on track. So.
Yeah.
I know.
And there is just kind of one other note out there about funding that you all will have to approve. If it comes up, is the HSSA funding ends the end of this year. And decisions around that, and that I believe is an ordinance that would need to be redone for 2023.
So which one would we would do that, because that's money that comes from the state.
From the state to that group, it really is pretty hands-off. We had issued debt for them, and their debt coincided with the term of the funding, and that ends this year. So
HSA stands for.
Health Science and Services Association.
Yeah.
Administration.
So they're helping to promote health sciences here in the area. As well as. You had a question on it?
Well, I just wonder, I know that Susan Ash is leaving and stuff, and I don't know where they're at with regard to a new executive director on that.
They're searching.
And stuff of that, and then I saw that Meg is leaving and stuff.
Yeah,
and
that was
so-
a surprise. Yeah, I got that email. I didn't think that was coming.
Yeah, well, and she's been doing a really good job
She
too and
has
stuff,
been.
so that would be a loss.
And Eric's retiring as well, Sawyer.
Didn't know that,
geez.
didn't know that either. Wow.
The heck. Okay.
A lot of, the wave.
In 3 weeks, we'll be back to brief the board on the roll-ups that we're tabulating now for the departmental submissions and their supplemental budgets.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That was very informative. You're next. Is there anything else?
We do not have any exec session need for today. And I do not have any other miscellaneous items for now.
Okay, practically anything.
No, same.
Good. Okay, any other miscellaneous matters?
So I don't know whether Scott has approached either one of you yet or not. If not, I'll just kind of give you a heads up about conversations that he and I have been having about. He's he's working to gear up for the update on the comp plan and stuff.
Are you talking Scott Chesney?
Scott Chestnut.
Like, Scott's right
I
here.
was wondering why he was leaning in. He's going to go, what's he
What did I
talking about?
say?
What did I do?
What you talking about, Willis? No, Scott Chesney. As he's getting ramped up for comp plan update and UG expansion, all that kind of stuff. And this is not unique to him and what he's doing. We've gone through this in each cycle before this. He's going to need additional resources in terms of outside consultants to come in and do the work as opposed to trying to do it internally.
I thought we approved that already.
I think we gave him some breathing room. I don't think we've given him enough breathing room yet. Well, and I think the breathing room we gave him was assuming that the planning window is going to be like X number of years. And I think that all three of us have got an energy to say, let's consolidate that into smaller, shorter time so we can expand the UJ faster. But to do that means he's probably going to need some additional resources and stuff. And I said, the last conversation I had with him last week, I said, what you need to do is you need to identify what those resources are and bring it to the board and let us have that conversation about, providing or finding you the resources you need, because my guess is that all three of us are in support of helping you get this done, but you need to tell us what you need to be able to get it done and stuff. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that I had that conversation with him. I encouraged him to prepare a budget to get to us and stuff. So I just wanted to let you know that
I
I'm
would say.
pushing
budget
that.
And a timeline,
Budget and timeline,
You know,
exactly right.
because,
Yeah,
because, showing why expending those funds are gonna get us to a quicker,
figure
you
out.
know, yeah.
Yep.
And then, and we still have to get past the settlement agreement before we can expand, is that correct?
There are some triggers in the settlement agreement, but probably can't talk much more about it at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I would expect that that sort of additional ask should come through Scott's supplemental budget requests when that rolls in as well. We'll double check to make sure it did. Unless there's a need
so,
earlier.
I think there's a need earlier. I think it's a conversation we probably. My suspicion is that the three of us are probably gonna want to have that conversation before year end.
Got it.
And so that's why I wanted to. Make sure that they were aware of it.
I do have one thing. So Commissioner French and I were approached around an opportunity to bring a individual
Yeah,
that has some really great expertise in dealing with railroads. That I think not only with the county, our public works department benefit from. Matt Zare, of course, said he agrees. So other jurisdictions, probably the PDAs, to really help us get better understanding and knowledge around working with the railroads, who are historically challenging to deal with, not only for ourselves, but even contractors. So learning more about kind of the ins and outs and how we might better facilitate that working relationship. This individual has done some work on behalf of other businesses in the community, and it's leveraged some pretty good results for us. So there's just a it could be a $5,000 to $7,000 support from each of the jurisdictions who would show interest to bring this individual in. So just more of an awareness thing. I think there's great value in it. I've seen complexities dealing with railroads. They believe they're they're federally regulated, and everything they do supersedes any local jurisdiction authority. They're notoriously slow, as we learned with Euclid Bridge and other projects that we've dealt with. So I think the more we can learn and educate ourselves about what we don't know today could be very helpful for the future.
We also know that railroads are starting to take people to beyond the UTC. They're actually starting to really push back against those fees for crossings and things like that, where the statute says no railroad, you can't pass that on. And they try to continue to do that.
there's
So,
actually a lawsuit
yeah,
right now
exactly.
that is happening that we're gonna be talking about when I'm over in.
Yeah.
With Eric Johnson, because I think is it the city of the valley?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've gotten that forwarded on to Wasac. They're taking a look at it. I think they're forwarding on to AWC as well. Because they're having the city of Spokane Valley take on the crossing guards, maintenance and operations, which is not what they should be doing. That is a railroad function and they have the expertise in it. And so.
Yeah, and you would recall, we were successful in UTC when we took them there.
Yes, so I'm not sure what the level it is now, but I just know that I forwarded on to Wasac as well. For us to take a look at counties across the state, because it's not okay.
Yeah, and the consultants bring in, there's no limit on the number of people that we in this thing and stuff. So, if the county is bought in on it, I think it's a de minimis cost based upon the benefit that we get. The airport is bought in on it. I talked to Steve McDonald last week, and he said they would be bought in on it. PDA, talking now the Highline Grain, because they're all obviously a user and would benefit from it. So it sounds, there's a lot of energy around common knowledge base about how to deal with their railroads and stuff. So certainly encourage us to be part of that as well.
So, yeah, so I guess I would just like to, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Yeah.
Love to get more information because I can say from a construction standpoint, girders could not be placed for 1 month at a Barker. The railroad held up girders getting placed for a month, 30 days, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
When you're trying to get supplies and all of that. So Yes, so for our contractors on Euclid, I mean, that's a concern as you start to get these things and they're like, oh, no, we can't do it. You know, it's like, it's, you know, it's just very interesting as to what I've seen from jobs on the north-south corridor and out in the valley. How difficult and it differs between the consultants that the railroads are hiring as well. Because each project has their own consultant from the railroads, so it's definitely not fun to navigate.
Well, and since the county owns the Geiger Spur and tangentially, you know, the new transload facility that's going in out there now, because that's, you know, owned by the airport that we own. I mean, there's a lot of investment the county's made in the rail. So, you know, expanding our knowledge base on how to deal with, you know, the two, not only the two providers in UP and BNSF, but also the short line operator as well. I think could benefit, and it's going to benefit Northeast PDA as well. So.
No, I
Anyway.
think it'd be good to have that cooperative environment. So yeah, so I'd like to learn more.
Yep.
Aquatic centers close on Sunday, just for your information.
What is?
Our two aquatic facilities.
Oh,
We kind of get to that point of the year
so are they closing for good or just close
for the season.
for the season on
Yeah.
Sunday?
What's so
Things are like,
Is
So
there-
historically, the reason we've closed 10 days before school even starts is because a lot of our lifeguards are college age. College does start next week, actually. So that's historically, that's been the reason why we close 10 days before our
Is there
elementary schools.
any way to keep it open a little while longer with the heat?
Yeah,
I can talk to Doug and Parks, but I think that it's a staffing issue.
Yeah, even on reduced hours, I mean, just to give some relief in the afternoons would be, you know, since we don't have a lot of splash pads, those are kind of our splash pads.
Right.
So,
We'll fall
I
with
guess-
Doug.
especially with the August heating up and stuff. I mean, this is gonna be triple digit week again, and it looks like it's kind of a,
you should be going over the sand lots.
yeah, really.
I'll follow up with Doug and see what our options are.
Okay. Okay, just, you know, because I know, you know, another pool I know is closed on like Mondays for staffing issues and stuff. So I mean, I know it's definitely an issue. But hopefully we can see if there's something we can do. And I know it's not, we may not have concessions. I don't know. That's the hard thing with everything, but. And then just miscellaneous for me, I'm gonna be over with the Wasac Executive Retreat starting tomorrow through Friday. So I will hopefully call into the 2 o'clock. So Commissioner French, if you could run the meeting on my behalf, that would be great. And I will hopefully call in, but I'll just be on my phone and hopefully have coverage along the I-5 corridor at that point. So,
Happy to do it.
okay,
We have GMA steering committee on Wednesday.
Yep.
I don't know that I'm gonna be able to make that.
Yeah, it's, I
So
think,
You two will have to let me know.
we've gotten through the first couple chapters. I think it's just staff's latest iteration and TTC's latest iteration on some of the other chapters as we work our way through that. I mean, it's laborious, but we're
I
getting
think-
there.
They had asked all members that I had comments to submit them by Ray, but I don't think I've seen anything condensed on what was submitted. So I assume we'll discuss those, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, they're doing a real good job of consolidating that 60-page document into something that's more meaningful and a lot less, you know, troublesome for the county in terms of litigation.
I think tomorrow's consent agenda is pretty.
Yeah, look, I didn't see anything jump out at me.
No public hearings.
Yeah.
The last week's was long.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Man.
Yeah, tomorrow should be a 5-minute meeting.
Yeah.
Take a 4-minute break.
And then based on the email we got on Sunday, I'm just. Public hearing, since we have our open public forums now, that would be a place for anyone to come and talk to us on something that's not on our agenda.
I missed an email.
We
that
got an
happened on
email when?
Sunday.
Matt Hawkins.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
He was asking for 2 minutes and I think
That's
that's.
actually the
I
canvassing.
thought
board.
that was for the.
That's for the
Yeah,
canvassing
that was
board. That
Was
was
it for
not,
the Chelsea board?
I have the same thing you did, Gina, set me straight.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if, otherwise, in the future, if he wants to
Yeah.
come, I mean, that's why we have the open public
Yep.
forums.
Yep.
Is for those 3 minutes.
Anyone, yeah.
And that's why I was confused, because I thought Matt Hawkins, no, he wants the canvassing board. Oh, that's right, you're on that. Yay.
Yeah, there's no choice. And I did talk to Eric Johnson with Wasack that
What do you
I guess
do?
they had tried in the past to get county commissioners to have a designee, and the state legislators never allowed it. They've not changed law, and so, no, this was still the state law that it has to be the chair of the Board of County Commissioners or one of the other commissioners. Would you like to do it?
Well, in this case,
because I'm on the ballot.
So am I.
So am I.
so by
Yeah.
necessity,
So-
one has to go.
So what do you do?
Someone-
You just, you show up and when you actually vote to sort, you just abstain then?
No, you still just have to vote.
Oh, I thought that's why if the chair, because in previous years, when the chair was on the ballot, one of the ones that wasn't on the ballot would have to fill in for them.
Right, but since there is no determination in the law for the 5 commissioner, going to the 5 commissioners to
Yeah.
allow for a designee, it still has to be a commissioner that is,
And they'll let you vote, not just you show up as in
State-
attendance
that's what
and then
state
just
law-
abstain.
that's what state law
Yeah.
says.
You have to let us know how that all turns out.
And like I said, I talked to Eric Johnson with Wasack and he said, it's like, no, that's the state law is you have to, as a county commissioner, we can't designate. And
So if you're suggesting that legislation is incomplete or inadequate, Marcus, MAR-CUN.
I was thinking I would be happy to look into it, Josh.
No, I wouldn't feel right taking that from you.
Yeah.
You're a gentleman. Let us know how it goes.
Yes, so I will have, Michael Argent's gonna be coming tomorrow morning with me, so that we gotta fly out, so I told him he could watch the fun. Although he may be meeting with you instead, thinking that would be more fun than sitting through the canvassing board meeting. And then we do have a recall, or not a recount on a PCO race.
Did they tie or is?
I don't know, I just got notice that we've got to do a recount.
Okay,
so.
a couple years ago, we actually had a tie.
Yeah.
They did the recount, it was still a tie, and so then they bring out the bottle with the 2 marbles, with the numbers and, yeah, so.
That's how they did it. huh?
So-
Yeah.
So some are coin toss.
So hopefully, that provides one more opportunity to see how the process works and for people to know how our election works there, so.
Do you
that's-
know what precinct it was?
I do not know. I just found out this morning that there's gonna be a recount, so I'll find out.
Not important. Just curious.
And I'm curious too. I'm curious what the numbers are and
Yeah.
stuff, so, yeah.
It's fun if it is a tie, because then you get to see the whole process. You get to see the recount, then you get to see the shake of the bottle, the game of chance, I think is what they have it or something. Yeah. That's how they define it. A game of chance.
So I don't know if the canvassing board meeting, if we have an open public forum. So I will look into that, but otherwise, like I said, I will be.
I don't think I've ever seen that on an agenda. I think
Actually, we did.
We'll have an open public forum at the
Yeah.
canvassing.
Really,
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
There's
it's
all
usually at
meetings
the
now.
end though. Oh, you mean
No.
because of the new OPMA
Broadway
rules?
players.
Oh, okay.
Well,
we may want
when I
to
The way they used to
talk
work,
about that.
I think when we reach the end of the meeting, Vicky would usually just turn around and say, okay, does anybody have any questions? And then she'd just field questions. So, but I don't think it was an agenda item. I think she usually just did it as soon as we're done with our work. Okay, if anybody has questions, let's hear them,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, that's what we did when I was there.
Yeah. But it wasn't like an official agenda item. Just did that at the end. so. Will they have to take open public comment to like on each action item to like certifying yes, we approve that these mismatched signatures are mismatched?
No,
No.
it'll be just at the certification part, the final
Okay.
action, whatever a
Okay.
final action. item
Okay.
is. Yeah. So the final action there would be the vote tally.
Anything else? Okay, well then, okay, Mark, what's my official, am I adjourning?
Yeah, we're up for the day.
Okay, we are adjourning for the rest of the day and we will reconvene tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the commissioners' hearing room. Thank you all very much. And